Welcome to The Exchange on CYC. Today we are joined by Anna Ruth, the CEO and founder of Freedom for Humanity, an incredible organisation that breaks human slavery through education. Their vision is to create a world free from human trafficking and modern slavery. Anna works with other organisations in Australia to identify people in slavery conditions. Anna, it's a pleasure having you here in the studio, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Susie. It is such an honour to be here and to be able to share the important cause that is happening and our organisation.
Yeah, so tell me more about Freedom for Humanity. I'd like to know, firstly, how it all started.
Well, 15 years ago, I was at a women's conference with 3,000 women, and one of the speakers was sharing how when she was at the airport in Greece, she found all these missing posters of children all over the airport. And she's Greek herself, and so she made some inquiries and found out they were being human trafficked. So when she shared that, that really shocked me. This is happening in the 21st century. So I filled in the form to express my interest to volunteer, and nobody got back to me. And so fast forward about 9 years ago, a handful of us volunteers created Freedom for Humanity. So how it happened really, you're probably wondering, is I heard God's voice that told me to do events to raise awareness against modern slavery and human trafficking. But I resisted the voice for 12 months because I always thought this is the responsibility of the billionaires, the millionaires, I'm just an ordinary girl trying to make ends meet. But for 12 months, this voice wouldn't leave me alone. And I knew God wanted me to do something. And so 12 months later, a handful of us volunteers created Freedom for Humanity.
So what is the work that Freedom for Humanity does in Australia specifically?
Well, we basically focus on doing events to raise awareness against modern slavery and human trafficking. So as an example, earlier this year, we hosted an international women's event in Darling Harbour. We had the Minister of Women, Jodie Harrison, who's also the Minister for Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault speaking. We had Salvation Army. We had Tahara from Afghans for Peace. We had Sahara, who's a director with the United Nations Association Australia in New South Wales, and she's a founder of a charity that mentors women in the third world country, and a gorgeous 17-year-old student from Barker College, because I was invited to speak with the students there last year, and she's actually the social justice captain. We kind of connected and she volunteered with me, and I was so impressed that I believe she's an inspiration to her generation and, of course, to our generation. And we had over 100 guests. But we also had hosted Thursday for Freedom cocktail event at Deloitte in Parramatta in previous year. And we had the former member of Parramatta, Dr. Jeff Lee, speaking. We had Patricia Garcia, she was from the UN speaking, and myself, because most people don't know there's modern slavery in Sydney. So that was a taster event to our gullible. But then also because of the pandemic, we couldn't do face-to-face event. So we had to pivot. And so we then created a modern slavery online summit. And we had over 21 speakers, including the Australian Border Force, New South Wales Police. We had speakers from the UK, the US, Hong Kong, and of course Australia. And it was just incredible to have all these incredible speakers to share about this cause and this issue, and not just locally, but also globally, so that we can together make a difference. We're really excited about the new board, that we've created a strategy for the new year, and it's really exciting to be able to work with these people from different backgrounds and experiences, and what we're going to do in the future. And what we want to do is to raise not only awareness but raise funds for scholarships for victims of human trafficking and modern slavery in Australia.
Wow, your organisation does such incredible work, particularly in the education and scholarship arena. Does slavery actually exist in Australia though?
100%. According to the Global Slavery Index, in 2023, there are 41,000 people in modern slavery in Australia. And that number tripled since 2018. And that's just a number that we know of. So according to the Attorney General's Department, they actually have put together a document. It's called the National Action Plan to Combat Modern Slavery 2020 to 2025. And I would like to highlight a few examples, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely. Please share.
Thank you. The first example is slavery in a brothel. An Australian couple organised 5 women to travel to Australia to work in their brothel. When the victims arrived, the couple were forced each victim to repay an artificial debt contract between $35,000 to $45,000 by servicing clients at their brothel. The couple forced these women to work 7 days a week for an average of 16 hours per day. They were forced to work and sleep in locked premises and were not allowed to leave the brothel unaccompanied. The couple also forced these victims to work through their menstruation and during severe illnesses and infections. The victims' personal possessions, including their passports, were confiscated, and they were receiving threats that their families would be harmed if they escaped. And the couple were convicted of 5 counts of slavery.
How do they actually find these women?
These are actually real examples that the Attorney General office has found these cases most likely with organisations as the Australian Federal Police, because they're the body that actually goes and rescue these survivors. So my second example is the trafficking of a chef. An Australian restaurant owner organised the travel of a man to Australia to work as a chef in one of his restaurants. When the man arrived in Australia, the restaurant owner confiscated his passport and made him work approximately 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. With minimal and irregular rest breaks, the man was forced to live in the restaurant and bath in the kitchen, using buckets of water. The man had limited freedom of movement, was continually physically and mentally abused, and received threats against his families overseas. The restaurant owner was convicted of trafficking in persons and was also ordered to pay almost $200,000 to the victim, which includes back pay, entitlements, and interest owed to the victim. My third example is a forced marriage of an underage girl. A religious official conducted a marriage ceremony between an underage girl and an adult man in Australia. The religious official was aware the girl was not of marriageable age, but claimed that he had conducted a religious blessing rather than the solemnization of a marriage. Both the husband and the religious official were charged with forced marriages offences. The charges were subsequently withdrawn after the underage girl advised that she consented to the marriage. The husband and the religious official were subsequently convicted of unlawfully marrying an underage person and unlawfully solemnizing a marriage involving an underage person. In 2019, the government amended the forced marriage offences to make these issues consent by any person under the age of 16 irrelevant. If this case occurred today, the consent would not have resulted in the withdrawal of the forced marriages charges. My last example is a servitude in a private home. A criminal organisation in Australia was operating 2 fraudulent call centres. exploiting almost 50 workers that had been recruited from overseas. These victims were forced to work 15 hours a day, 7 days a week with no pay. The victims had their passport and mobile phones taken away from them and were subject to a regimen work schedule and strict house rules that controlled where they could shower, eat, and sleep. 2 offenders were convicted of servitude. This is why the Attorney General Office last month has appointed Australia's first anti-slavery commissioner. So the government is taking this seriously. And this is such a breakthrough that Australia is really, leading the other countries forward.
Well, they are incredible examples of how Australia is actually supporting organisations such as yourself in not only educating but rescuing these people that are in these situations, and the law and the reform that they are doing there is just phenomenal. So piggybacking off those examples, how important is this issue of slavery for Australia as a whole?
It's 100% important. So much so, as an example, over a year ago, I was invited to a private screening at the Event Cinema in Castle Hill on dairy abuse. And I had no idea what that was. And I invited a couple of my friends thinking this was a networking event. But to my shock, this film was made for the police force. So it's not even open to the public. And this film was made in Blacktown and Kellyville, which is not far from where I lived. And this film was based on true event where the bride has to pay money and assets to the groom's family when she has none. In this film, she was isolated and abused. At the end of the presentation, a father came up to the front of the Hillshire Council, police force, Sydney University, and he spoke up. And he said that my daughter, who went to university, committed suicide because she didn't want to bring shame to the family. So this one example includes dowry abuse, forced marriage, debt bondage, slavery, and servitude. That's 5 categories of modern slavery right here in Australia. Another example I wanted to highlight, one of my friends, she was trafficked across Europe to Amsterdam for more than 10 years by her 2 boyfriends. Because she came from a single mum, often parents were not around. So she met a guy at a bar and, he started to take care of her, groom her. And then after 2 or 3 months, told her that she has to contribute and start working and then told her to and dropped her off at a brothel. So, it is unfortunately happens to people who often we love and trust.
Yeah, such powerful and shocking stories as well, Anna. Let's talk some statistics now. Tell me some statistics about not only the slavery industry or the human trafficking industry, but how that also impacts globally, not just in Australia.
Yeah, thank you for this question, because when I learned about this, I was quite shocked. In 2018, according to the Global Slavery Index, there were 40.3 million people in bondage. However, in 2022, 5 years later, the ABC confirmed that number has jumped by 10 million in 5 years to 50 million. And these are predominantly women and children with families and communities. 71% are women, and 1 in 4 victims are children, which is just not okay, is it?
Absolutely shocking. So when you look at it globally, how many billions of dollars are we talking? Is it one of the biggest industries in the world? Try and compare it to something else that we have in the world at the moment, I don't know, such as firearms or the stock market or something like that.
So I thought it was a 40 to 45 billion dollar industry, but it is actually over 150 billion dollars. Where the GDP, to put into context, if modern slavery was a country, okay, it would rank number 56 in the world, where the GDP of Hungary sits at $140 billion. But with all that happened the last 5 years, with the pandemic, with the war in Ukraine and now in Israel, realistically, we're looking at well over $200 billion. And that's just the numbers that we know of. So it is actually not just, it's actually the second most profitable industry in the world, exceeding arms at the expense of women and children.
Exceeding firearms.
This is why our government is on board. It follows our strategy for the future to embody what's happening in Australia. It's a great opportunity that the government is on board with what we are trying to achieve here at Freedom for Humanity.
Yeah. Now, I know you briefly mentioned you do scholarships. Can you tell me a little bit more about that program that Freedom for Humanity does?
Of course. For us, our goal is to raise funds for scholarships for victims of human trafficking and modern slavery in Australia, because we believe education is the key to freedom. It breaks the cycle of poverty, and together we can create a path for them that they'll never have otherwise. And so we are looking to work with key organizations to identify people in slavery conditions. You know, organizations like Salvation Army, the Australian Federal Police, the Red Cross. So our strategy is to align with these organizations so that it breaks the cycle of poverty, and for them to be able to create a new path that they will never have otherwise.
So it sounds like education is key in what you're proposing there with these programs.
100%, because for me, you know, if I wasn't educated, I wouldn't have the opportunities to be able to travel, to be able to do what I'm doing. It's, you know, being able to give them a path that they would really never have otherwise.
So Anna, what is the future looking like for Freedom for Humanity, and what have you got coming up in the next couple of years for the organisation?
We have a very exciting event that we're really looking forward to inviting people. It's the gala dinner, and we already have the Human Rights Commissioner. We want to be able to create that is elegant, magical and inspiring, so that they can bring you know, their friends, their colleagues, their clients, but also to have a great night out, because for me it's really important to create a safe space for them to be able to learn about how we can all get involved, because I always tell my team, it's not one person, one company, one city, one nation can do this. This is a global issue. I'm just one little, you know, one person, but together we can make a bigger impact. Another important, you know, element that we're looking for are volunteers. We are all volunteers, and we are looking for, you know, young people to be moved, touched and inspired, to be able to, you know, get some experience and to assist in our organization, because I feel like young people are the leaders for the next generation.
Anna, you have been such an inspiration, and it's been wonderful having you here in our studio to talk about the incredible work that Freedom for Humanity does for Australia, because as you said, it is a global issue, but it does impact locally. And I thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me today, Susie.
And if you've enjoyed today's segment, you can watch this one and so much more on The Exchange on CYC. This is Susie Michael. Thank you for watching.